About a week ago, I got a bright idea uh, to completely rewrite and change the story that I have been writing for the past few months, and the story that I have edited at least two times. I'm Shubh Das Gupta, the author of Our Mother's Will, and currently writing the sequel, Our Father's Gift. So here's what happened. I edited the manuscript a couple of times, then I left it alone for a month or so. I think it was more. And I was writing a completely different new manuscript. So this was a new approach I am trying because I've read somewhere that it's better that you let the manuscript breathe, you leave it for some time, and then you work on something else. And the magical thing that happened was during this process, when I had supposedly left it alone randomly in the middle of the day during moments where I was working, maybe like doing housework, washing utensils, or maybe like during while I was taking shower or while I was on my way to work, a few things would come to my mind and I would feel like I have to go back and change that. Oh, this I didn't write that well, I have to go and rewrite that scene. So over the course of a month or so, ideas like that kept on coming and I sort of made a mental note. So in the last week of March, I dusted off the manuscript and I sat down for the final edit. Now, one thing became very clear to me. Because I was writing a thriller, and thrillers are mostly, they work well when they are fast paced, when there is a strong narrative propulsion in the forward direction. So in the interest of speed, sometimes what happens is character development suffers, and the characters suffer because the mistake that I made thinking of it as plot driven narrative propulsion. Instead, characters that grow from a certain state A to a certain state B, and during that growth, whatever happens actually makes the plot of the story. So it's really about a little shift in your mindset. In this third edit, my goal was to, balance character development, plot development, and narrative speed. So I tried my best to reach that compromise, the middle point between these two. And the good thing is I got done with 5 chapters, and then I just couldn't do it because something else happened. Now, over the course of the last 1 month, I've been also rewatching my favorites, one of my favorite shows, Better Call Saul. So I'm not sure how many times I have rewatched this show, but it's quite a lot. I sat down and started, thinking about a little about how Vince Gilligan has written it, what his approach to writing is, and I also took the help of some of these popular AI tools to help me distill, from these two shows, the writing, what are the main writing tips that one could take away from Vince Gilligan. As the AI started populating it and I started reading it and started comparing results from different LLMs, what I understood is there is a lot of scope for improvement in my manuscript. And that's when randomly I decided that at this late stage, when I was thinking of an April launch, no, it cannot go on like this. I have to rewrite my story. The plot remains the same, the characters remain the same, the angle changes. And in this video, I want to narrate my experience about why I'm doing this, and also sort of document it, because I think 1 month or 2 months when the book is going to come out, I'm going to watch this video and sit back and reflect upon, oh, had I not made the change, I would have probably produced a very different book, and I don't know how it will turn out. We'll all take our chances. So let me break down what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to learn from Vince Gilligan and apply to my third edit. Now let me tell you something that Vince Gilligan does very successfully that almost no one does. Most thrillers work on plot development. They are built on a question of outcome. Will the protagonist survive? Will the underdog one day get his or her rightful share of credit? Will they win? And the tension often comes from not knowing the answer, and that tension itself drives the story forward. And that's a legitimate way to tell a story. It definitely works. It has worked for so many, but Vince Gilligan, of course, approaches it very differently. Gilligan's shows are based on a completely different moral question, which is essentially this: how much will this character become someone else before it is all over? Now think about Breaking Bad. Think about Walter White. From the second episode at least, everyone knows where the story is going, right? Everyone knows what Walter is going to do. He is going to ditch the good guy persona and totally lean into his darker side. Everyone knows that is going to be the moral downfall, but yet each step and how deep he falls with each step and what happens as a result of that and how his character changes as a result of that is fascinating to watch. And every step you're inside his head, you agree with his logic, and you probably probably, imagine yourself in his shoes, and you are confident you would have taken the same decisions. And yet, when he faces, the consequences of his action, there is less empathy from your side. He made his own bed, and now he must lie down in it. And every choice he makes is therefore indefensible. And the show holds both of these things simultaneously. And on one side, you are seeing every step of his, and you're agreeing with it, and you're agreeing with his logic. And on the other hand, you also agree that it is indefensible, and therefore there shall be a consequence. And there is absolutely, no heavenly forces involved in that consequence being, delivered to him. Is just essentially the law of karma, action and consequences. Now let's think about Better Call Saul. The character of Jimmy McGill starts off on a note where, he's genuinely funny. He's cracking all those wisecracks all the time. He has a lot of hustle, Charlie hustle. Of course, he gets his law degree, tries to make a good, honest living. Though slipping Jimmy keeps on rearing his head. We see the consequence of the tension between, James McGill, the lawyer, and the old slipping Jimmy play out very beautifully on screen. And there's, of course, the other characters who are like, you cannot ever change. This is you. This is how you were from the day you were born. And this goes on. And he tries to become a different person. And this goes on. And this goes on. And in that tension, finally, when he gives up, and finally, when he becomes the person that, his worst critics had always predicted, you really cannot cheer for him. You feel a little sad, because here was this guy this close to being, legit enough and respected enough, only for that fatal character flaw which did not let him be. And here we are with the consequences of this fascinating narrative. And that's the thing about these shows, none of the characters is a victim of fate or of like unfavorable circumstances. They get dealt cards that they are dealt in their life, and they have to do what they have to do. There is a good side in them, and there is a fatal flaw in them. And of course, the whole of the show is tension, tug of war between these two sides, and eventually they end up making choices that are not good. Yet they are not total villains, they are not total heroes, they are morally in the grey, and probably that's for the best. The universe in Vince Gilligan's Better Call Saul or Breaking Bad landscape is morally consistent. It's almost as morally consistent and universal as the law of karma, and the karma is absolute. And then when I looked at my manuscript through that lens, I saw the problem immediately. I had been writing my book as a survival story. Here's this family, here's this difficult circumstance that is sort of forced upon them, and here's certain things that they do. Some of them you may agree with, some of them you may not agree with as a reader. And as a result of the circumstances, things happen, and the essential question is, will they survive? And that question drives the story from page 1 to page last. And the answer to, can they make it, will they survive, is fundamentally an external question. It depends on circumstances, on the enemies they have made, new and old, on luck, and of course the plot. But then I realized that my book is not really about, these external circumstances. It's about these characters and who they become because of the circumstances that are forced upon them. On their choices depend on the free will that they have at every single decision point and what they do with it. And when I saw that distinction very clearly, I realized that I had been writing the wrong version of my own story. Plot was right, the premise was right, the trigger was right, the inciting incident was right, but the moral architecture underneath all of it was fundamentally pre-decided, because I started the story with the question, will they make it, and not who are these characters and what happens to them and how long can they become, other people before it's all over. And when there is a strong moral architecture, strong moral fabric in the universe that you have written about, your reader expects consequences to every action, and every action does have consequences. None of the actions cannot be given a free pass. I messed up that part of it, and I started out with the end question, and I did not spend enough time with the characters, the way they were developing, the just choices they would have made, and of course the consequences. The consequences had to be real, they had to be inescapable, and they had to be staring the reader in his face. So let me tell you a little about what the book is. My second book, Our Father's Gift, is a sequel to the first one, which is Our Mother's Will. Now, in the sun-bleached courtyards of Banaras, a family wakes up to a terrifying reality. Their father's legacy wasn't a fortune, it was a trap. They have inherited a dangerous empire, a dangerous business. And the question that the book asks you from the first page to the last is, how many pieces of their own souls are they willing to harvest so that they can survive this new business? 3 siblings, 1 inheritance, and a single objective that shatters whatever piece they have managed to build over the last few years. Now, I'm not going to tell you more than this at this point because the book isn't ready yet. The characters deserve to be met on the page and not on the video. But yes, this video is for talking about different things. But what I'll tell you is the closing line, and This line is something that I've had from the very beginning, and this line is very close to my heart, very dear to my heart. And it goes, "In the trade of lives, the most expensive organ is a clean conscience." Now, that's the book. That's what it is about. And that's what the third rewrite has to live up to. In this part, I'll discuss how I'm approaching the rewrite. It doesn't mean that the plot changes, doesn't mean that the story has to change. What will change is the treatment. And the universe has to operate on the fundamental, theory of karma, which every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Not immediate, not always visible, but there is, of course, always a consequence. So that's what I'm building into this draft. And I'm going to go back to every major decision each character has to make, and I'm going to review the decision that they are making and review the thought process before the decision through the lens of two questions. Question number one is this choice completely understandable? Now, can the reader follow the logic from inside? Can the reader feel the pressure the character is under, and can also understand why this felt like the only option available? And if the answer is no, then the scene is not well written enough. And the second question is, does the reader feel the weight of this decision? Does the reader feel the weight of what's being given up? And not in a heavy-handed way, not with the author's hand visible on the page, but somewhere in the writing, in what the character notices. Because if the cost isn't present, then there's no karma. Without karma, the ending is just an ending. It is not a consequence. So that's the work. It's not showy. It's slow. It's steady. It's introspective. It's stopping at major decision points and asking and re-asking the same question again and again, and finding interesting answers. But I believe this is the only version of the book that is worth writing. And I'll be honest, I'm not totally dreading it. I'm also interested to see where this story goes, because I had started with a certain thing in my mind. Now, over the course of writing it, rewriting it 2 times, the story had already changed significantly. And now, finally, I feel like I have a better story in mind. I have a better ending in mind. I have a better moral universe in mind, moral architecture in mind. And I just need to ask every character during every decision point 2 questions, and then write and rewrite and see how it goes. So I'll be documenting this rewrite as I go. Not every session, but important moments like this, which trigger me to make such a long video as this one. And if you're writing currently, if you're editing currently, and if you have experiences to share, questions that you may have encountered from yourself and others, please feel free to share them with me, not just here on the comments, but also reach out to me on my Instagram through my DMs. My DMs are always open, and I'll see you very soon in the next video. Thank you so much.